Hello, everybody. Well, yet again, I'm going to say this once again, as I say every single week. Where does the week go? Because it literally flies by. Yes, it's Friday, it's 11 o'clock, and you've just joined us for the Newpreneur cast. Now, here's the thing, everybody who are watching and listening on LinkedIn and also on my YouTube channel called @LeeFosterOfficial. So if you haven't subscribed yet, click the bell button and subscribe to the YouTube channel today to be kept up to date of what's coming up with many Newpreneur cast interviews in the foreseeable future. Here's the thing, right? I've only had one cup of coffee, which I've told my guest about this morning. But what's got me thinking today's chat and my guest I've got along with me today is there's a real dilemma out there, I believe, with solopreneurs and people who are just starting off in business, but actually people who are established in business, about the value, about the price tag they put on their experience and knowledge. And the guest I have with me today, we had that conversation about what did you decide in the early days, what would be the value you put on your price tag for your consultancy businesses, for your business itself. So where are you at the minute, everybody's watching this today, have you been through that challenge of actually thinking, what do I price on my worth? Have a think about that today as we go through our Newpreneur cast with my guest today. Okay. So my guest today is a great connection in business. He's one of my fellow RBC members based down in Ayrshire. He helps many corporate businesses with their HR facilitation, human resources, just if you want to know what the HR stands for. Okay. Now, he's been helping loads of people. So please welcome with me today and this week is the one and only Mr. Stephen Allan of Concept HR Solutions. Stephen, how are you today?
I'm good, Lee. Yourself? Thank you very much for having me again.
No, you're welcome. It's been a while since we caught up the last time because the last time it was a different guise. It was Revitalized Meats. So I was interviewing you, putting you under the spotlight more about your business. But now it's great to welcome you along to the sort of Newpreneur cast, in other words. So all good on that one. How's your week been, first of all, Stephen?
It's been a quick one. We had a couple of days off in the middle of the week because we were in Manchester for not so much a business trip, so we did have a couple of days off during the week. So it's great to get that balance and that flexibility, but sometimes just adds a wee bit of pressure on either side of it to get stuff done. So yeah, it's been one of those weeks that's been fun, but pretty full on at the same time. But good, all good.
It's nice because I was chatting to somebody again last week with the many people I've been chatting to, and it's about getting that life balance. You know, if you want to take time off, that's the benefit of working for yourself, though, Stephen.
Yeah, 100%. You know, that is indeed.
Disappear to Manchester, which is a beautiful city, by the way, and you want to go there and enjoy it. Did you literally switch off? Did you recharge the batteries?
I actually did that. Yeah, I wasn't too bad. So my partner was with me. So generally, when they're with me, the laptop isn't really allowed to put in an appearance. So yeah, I did a not too bad job of switching off the last couple of days. So
good. Yeah. It's the hardest part, though. You're tapping into your phone, you're watching what's happening.
It's tough.
Somebody phones you, and you're putting out of office on there, etc. as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, Stephen, let's delve in straight away because we were chatting about this a few months back before I got you lined up today as a guest. And we're talking about where you were in your business in the early days. Did you have a dilemma of the price tag you put on your services?
100%.
Really?
And that's 100%. And I think there's a lot of things can feed into that, especially when you are new into business. And again, if I use myself as an example, so my entire career has been spent in corporate, and where every month I didn't really need to think about asking anybody for money in exchange for a service, so the money just says, when you're employed, the money appears in the bank account every month, which is great, but it's a totally different dynamic when you move into running your own business, and all of a sudden you're trying to position services and obviously in exchange for money. And I think in the early days there was definitely a lot of things sort of showed up for me around about just general confidence in myself, and it sort of kind of ties back to that really kind of knowing your worth. and probably I get probably using that phrase a bit of imposter syndrome, sort of kind of keeping in as well, and that voice in the background sort of saying, oh, people aren't going to pay you that, you're not going to get, it's who's, there's just so many different things creep in, and there's also, there was a lot of stuff there for me as well, just round about like that showed up round about like my mindset round about money and different things. So it's quite interesting actually when you start to kind of delve into it a bit deeper, just a lot of the thoughts and the mindset that's attached to money and pricing in general.
I suppose the way you said that as well, though, is chasing the pounds, is chasing the sale. We think we're not salespeople, but we are salespeople in some respect when we go into our business, because when you put the price tag out there, you get that first client that goes, yeah, I'll take that, Stephen. And you go, brilliant, superb. But now the stage comes where the tough challenge is, okay, you now need to pay me. And it's sort of like collecting that money. When you put a price tag on what your services were, did you take in consideration in the early days about the wealth of experience from that corporate industry you came from? Did that play a part in you putting a price tag on it?
I'd probably say not as much as it does now, because I think again going back to the initial startup stage, it was a confidence thing, and it was how do you position that experience, and how do you kind of share what you've done in the past. And I know that in the early stages, I wasn't putting enough focus and enough emphasis on that, and as a result, I probably was seriously undercharging at that point in time in the early stages of my business. And I say it just goes, there's so many different things just sort of kind of feed into that, and the mindset around about it, and what are people actually prepared to pay for the services that I offer. And I think as well, you're going into a bit of an unknown, and the same as any other business, you're wanting to try and you sort of get a feel for what other people who do the same thing as you, sort of what they're charging, and so it's that one, you're not overcharging yourself within the market, but at the same time you're not undercharging. And what I found was that information wasn't readily available. So you're trying to research online, and just try to find as much information about it as you can, but that looking back now, that information isn't as readily available. And it's not until you start to kind of move through the stages of being in business and growing your business and getting to know other people and other consultants as well. And that's definitely been really helpful. And the majority of people that I have met who are other HR consultants and in the same line of work, we've been able to have conversations about pricing and rates and different things like that, and we've been quite open about it, because we want to be able to help each other, and we all, the people that I have in my network, who are in the same line of work, we are all very much of the same mindset, that it's collaboration over competition. And we're quite prepared to share what we do behind the scenes, and in order to sort of help each other out, because there's more than enough work out there for us all. So yeah, that's something that's always been quite important to me as well. And I've been approached by some people who have been thinking about going out on their own, and that's always one question that comes up anytime somebody speaks to them about it, is what do I charge? So it's nice to be able to now be in a position where you can sort of help and guide and advise other people who are thinking about making the same decision as I did, because again, I didn't have that information at that time, and I know how difficult it was for me to start to try and pitch things. And I think if you go in too low at the offset, if you're working with businesses quite regularly, it then becomes a bit more difficult to try and move that pricing up to be reflective of where it should sit, essentially.
It's harder to go up than come down
Yeah,
when you're in
100%.
that sort of position as well. But what's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting about, and what I really love about that, is that collaboration side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an area that isn't tapped in enough, Stephen, personally speaking. I think there's a lot of businesses out there keep their cards close to their chest, which is fair enough. But
Yep.
again, in your industry, in your sort of background of human resources and employment law and support and assistance and, well-being in the workplace and this, that, and the other, I think there should be more of that, what you've just mentioned there, and actually giving people a helping hand up of addressing those questions that they have in the early
Mm-hmm.
days. I think that's really refreshing to hear that, because you're in a stage where you can actually give that advice. And there's always a bit of grey scale area in there as well, behind it. I think what you mentioned there as well before was interesting about the imposter syndrome that you brought in there as well, right? But then also looking at when you put a price tag on it, and let's fast forward now to where you are now. So from startup mode to where you are
Mm-hmm.
now, has the price point changed in any way? And the way I like to look at it, it's price versus profit. Not really
Mm-hmm.
about the profit, it's about the positioning. Do you feel you've
Yep.
positioned yourself in a better light now?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the early days, the pricing model was very much based around it was essentially exchanging time for money. So working more on an hourly rate, day rate, and that does still form part of the pricing model, depending on the type of work that's being done.
Mm,
But I'll come on to a couple of things. So if I look at the monthly subscription packages that we do, so even the like, sort of kind of how the pricing has been positioned with them, we've built out like a three-tier subscription package model. So we've got an essentials package, an enhanced package, and professional package, which allows businesses to join at a level of support that feels most suited to them, and they can move up that level of support as they grow. And obviously, as they move up the levels of support, then the price point changes, but so does the headcount as the company gets bigger as well. So it's just been a bit clearer around about how the packages have been structured, and the client has got that ability to move up the levels as their needs change essentially. And another thing that I have, and this is something else that's taken quite a lot of time to try and get to grips with, is position and value based pricing.
mm,
So moving away from pricing purely based on hours work, but instead focusing on the outcome and impact that the work that you're delivering actually has for the client you're serving. Um, and yeah, that I think that's where I've now began to draw a lot more on, or begin to think a lot more about the level of expertise that I bring from my days in working in corporate, and the roles that I've done, and the time I've spent in corporate, and the groundwork I've done, being at the forefront of what happens on a shop floor.
yeah,
And I've always worked in operational, even HR, always been on the operational side of businesses. I've never really been a head office HR person, so I've always been in the thick of it, and I've always seen sort of what happens on a day to day, and having that level of experience has allowed me to help clients quite quickly, because I get the stuff they're up against day in
yeah,
day out sometimes, and what are the things that we can do to fix those issues for clients, and how can we fix it quite quickly. So if you look at issues such as like absence and performance, and where you might have a culture that in the workplace that might be a bit toxic, and a
mm,
lot of grievances getting raised, the time and effort it takes for a business to try and resolve all these sort of issues, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of resource, it's a lot of effort, and can sometimes be a lot of heartache along the way for a lot of people that are involved in it. And that's where I'm talking about how you sort of moving towards that sort of value based pricing model, because you're able to clearly show the outcome and the impact that your work is potentially going to have in a client's business.
And it's great you've gone down that road, and testament to yourself, Stephen. But you mentioned before about the subscription model. Do you find that the subscription model now is giving everybody who you work with more time of you? So it's giving them more access to you regularly. But I'm going to come to another question in a minute, but does that give them more time with you and the team a lot regular, weekly or monthly, part of that subscription model? Is that why you implemented a subscription model into your business?
Yeah, so there was sort of a couple of things there. It was about, it's about providing a service for businesses that feel that they need something that's a bit more frequent. Businesses that want to have somebody at the end of the phone, at the end, available on email, just for that reassurance and that peace of mind that they're going to get, if they've got an issue, they need to speak to somebody quickly about it, they're going to get a quick response. And that's probably the main offering within the subscription packages. So it is that quick access, that quick support, that quick turnaround, and dealing with some of the more day-to-day things that crop up, but also at the same time, they've got somebody they can pick the phone up to when they can potentially see an issue starting to arise, so we can then take steps and act on it before it becomes a much bigger problem, and it takes them a lot more time and a lot more effort to resolve. So that, and it's the subscription packages, I say, are very much about the day-to-day and general HR, kind of queries and challenges that crop up, and that for me is where it's the probably sort of entry level, kind of package of businesses initially coming to work with you. Sometimes it might be they have had, if a new client approaches you, it might have been that they've had a major issue kick off. So, for example, they've had a quite a serious disciplinary issue, and we'll help them work their way through that on a sort of project basis. But through that, they can then see the value of having an external professional to support them with those sort of things as and when. And that's maybe when as well you'll see people coming on board on the subscription packages for the more frequent and ongoing support.
I think we're going into a place this day and age, I feel, Stephen, that initially it was like invoice for your services as a one-off consultancy rate. So you had a consultancy rate, day rate, or an hourly rate, and you just charge people that time. I think now people need that more information stream. And I think going into a subscription model is so easy now, just to pay that minimum payment for maximum value. But the question I've got for you now, though, is, are you afraid to charge more? So if you upped your subscriptions by a little bit more, do you feel a bit hesitant in doing that? Does that mean you would have to change all your price model?
I think it's one of those sort of things where price increases can sometimes come naturally, because of increased costs within my business. I'm quite fortunate in that I would say that I don't have what I would say is like a massive amount of overhead. I work from home, so I don't have the cost of premises.
Yeah.
So I'm quite fortunate in that regard, and I do try and only introduce price increases where I feel I really would need to, and it's, for example, where a client has maybe outgrown the pricing tier that they're on. So if their headcount has grown quite a bit, then that would potentially need to be a conversation about moving up to the next price bracket, the next price point. But I'd probably say at this point in time, and I feel quite comfortable with where the pricing sits for those sort of services, and I feel that they're quite competitive. And again, the way that the subscriptions have been structured, it is for me a true subscription, and we provide as part of those offerings. It is the basics. It's what businesses need day to day, but I don't have, for my subscription packages, I don't have a minimum term. So we'll get the client on board. We'll do we'll onboard the client. We'll do a run through of what they've got in place currently. If it's a new client, so where are the risks? Do they have contracts? Do they have the key policies? Do they have right to? So we'll make sure that the compliance is there, but we don't tie our clients in long term. Because I think
subscription. Sorry,
it's a rolling subscription.
Yeah,
it's a rolling subscription model that I operate from, and that's why the offering is kept quite lean and quite basic, because they can then move up and utilise other offerings that are there within the business. So, for example, if they need 3 or 4 policies done, that they would purchase that as a one-off, because there's only so many policies a small business is actually going to need. So for me to charge a client an extra £100 a month to pay for a package that's got policies in it, it's something they're not going to use and they're not utilising. So I've been really quite keen to build the subscriptions out for the key services and the core things that clients ask for every day, and it seems to be working quite well for me just now. So
that's cool. I mean, one of the things I think about as well is, and I'm going to come on to this now, is that you've got them on a rolling subscription, but I always talk about like communicating to the other people out there, communicating your value and communicating your worth. Have you got a set routine that to attract these clients? Have you got a strategy, a plan that you communicate your value on a regular basis, or is it just word of mouth advertisement, Stephen?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. So we are seeing more referrals coming through from existing clients, which is great. And we ask pretty much all our clients for testimonials and recommendations we use on social media, which again just lets people see the value of something like a subscription offering, and the pressure that it can sometimes take off the business owner. And I think and I had a conversation with a client where just a month or so ago, where there were some thing changes, and there were going to be some things changing within the business, and the client themselves had multiple businesses within their overall brand, and it was likely that we would only now end up working with one of those businesses because of the changes that were happening elsewhere in the business. But the general manager of that business was absolutely wanting to retain what we were doing for him, because his words, it just made my life so much easier knowing that my onboarding's getting done. The admin side of things is getting taken care of. We've got an HR system that helps me manage the holidays. You're there anytime we need a question answered. And he says, I'm struggling to picture what it's going to look like if that was no longer there for us in the business now, because essentially that would all have started to fall on him. So preparing contracts, employment, getting people set up on an HR system, using spreadsheet, go back into using a spreadsheet to track all of these, all of that sort of stuff. So I think it's when they see that value and that potentially no longer being there. Some people, it was one of those sort of, no, what, we absolutely need to keep going with this, which was nice, because you can see that that's where you're making a difference.
Aye, it's good to have that. And do you feel that, what you're looking at doing, will that adapt and change, do you think, for the next month, the next year, the next 2 years? Do you see that's your pricing positioning would change in the marketplace?
I think it will slightly, with the vast, like you said earlier, the vast majority of kind of pricing and rates and different things. I'm happy with where that sits, for the subscriptions, different things, where that sits just now. But there are other services that I'm looking to bring into the business as we go through the rest of this year. And if I use like the management training program that we're launching at the moment, it's the 90-day people manager fix. That was again definitely one of those where, oh God, I don't know if I'm getting this quite right, and I was a bit nervous about putting that, kind of sharing that information with clients. But again, it's positioning it in a way that you look beyond the cost of an individual attending that that training program
Yeah.
compared to what some of the issues that can crop up could potentially cost your business in terms of an employment tribunal claim. Somebody being off long-term sick that you can't get back to work, somebody who's underperforming, a disengaged team, managers being stressed out. It's when you start to position it in that way, people then start to go, totally see the investment now. And when I'm putting these sort of things together, I do ask a lot of people for feedback. So I share a lot of the blueprint for it, and the drafts, I suppose, with colleagues, and I do ask for feedback and ask for input. And what was quite reassuring coming back from those people, and the people who are in L&D and coaching, and they've seen a lot of these sort of programs. It was quite reassuring, the feedback that I got round about the price point, that it was quite reasonable. So it felt that level, it was being pitched at the right level, which was good. But you sometimes feel you're taking a wee bit of a punt, and you just. But it's just being confident in knowing the value that you provide through the different levels of services. And I say we've launched that. Which is probably one of the boldest offerings I think that we've actually done so far in the business. And again, when you're taking steps like that to put high ticket offers out there is that element of vulnerability within you as well, and nervousness and wondering how it's going to go. But it's true what they say. There's a lot of thought, a lot of effort went into putting it together. But it's true what they say: nothing ventured, nothing gained at the end of the day. So. It's just about sort of communicating the value, and just helping people understand what could happen, or what the risks are if you don't start to invest in these sort of things in your business.
I've done the same thing. I've gone through the same process over the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks or so, and I put something out there this week, and I looked at my sort of price point and the value proposition that was bringing to play with it. And it was for sort of like a full day strategy session with me, and I positioned it in a way, and then a coach that I work with pushed me and went, do you think that's what you're worth, and do you think that's what you should be charging, and do you think that's not the charge word I should use, should that be the price that they're investing to get what they need from you? But also I did an exercise of looking at what are the benefits to the company and the individual to reflect upon that price point in there, because you have to, it's not like a check the win type thing. It's like, okay, I'll just throw that in there and give it a try. It sort of takes a bit of time to position it the right way, and also to set yourself up in the marketplace where you feel that people are going to go, hang on a minute, never seen that before. Wow, okay, yeah, I'll invest into that one. Get the time in first to have that conversation, and then you follow it through with, right, here's the next stages. This is what we need to do to get things into place. I think that's really important. I'm going to just bring it back again if we can, but do you feel in that first 6 months of running your business, because I've known you for quite a while now, Stephen, right? So in that early part of your business coming out, because I went through the same thing coming out of a corporate industry, and I didn't have a price tag on what I did. And then I put a £3.50 door fee on for one of my events just to cover teas and coffees and this and the other. And some people didn't even pay that. Right? It's like, for what I do, like networking meetings and events and this and the other, when I'm not paying to go to a networking event or an investment of time, they want to see what they're getting back out of it as well, the value proposition from it. Do you feel you undervalued yourself in the early days? You talked about imposter syndrome before, that sort of mindset kicking in. Do you feel if you could go back to where you were in that first year of business, would you change that position of what you know now?
I think definitely. I definitely would, because I know myself in the early days, it was I was undercharging compared to, if I look now at, again, it's that classic case of if I know now, kind of know what I'd known then sort of idea. I would have done it a lot differently, and but I think it's just one of those. It's part of the journey, and you do eventually just sort of find your way with it. And I can remember the very first time I ever had to send an invoice, and it was for like £125, and I felt sick at the thought of clicking that send button to send somebody this invoice. And to go for that, to sitting in a room with a managing director and other directors around about the table, and when you're asked directly about how much it would cost for you to go into a business and spend a day with them, to be able to sit there and confidently speak about that, you know that you've came on and not flinch, and that you know that you've came on a long way. And money is probably, again, just kind of going back to the mindset thing about money. Money is always a topic that I have personally found really uncomfortable, even in my personal life. It is one of those sort of topics that is really taboo, and a lot of people don't like talking about it, and I never have done. So it was something that was really pushing me right outside my comfort zone, and for me, that was where I could see the progress and how far I had come to be able to sit in that environment and say, this is what the rate would be. It's definitely been a challenging one just to get over that hurdle.
I mean, when I put an invoice out once in my early stages, and I did a full day training for a company based in Belfast, and I put it out there as an introductory offer, and they accepted my first offer. Wow. In my head, I'm thinking, was I too low? Would I position it too right? And then, you go out and you package everything you can into it because of what you're delivering. But it's also, there's a point there you've just mentioned, that is when you feel confident when you're sitting there with a managing director, somebody who's the decision maker in that company, corporate environment, that you can actually deliver and explain with pure confidence, this is what you're going to get. This is the benefit to you and your work colleagues. And this is the results you're going to get from the back of it. That is, leaps and bounds where we are in our first year of business. Sometimes there's people come out the traps when they first start off. They know exactly what they're going to do. They hit the ground running massively, and they change their price model maybe every two to 3 years potentially as well. That's in there that I've seen over the years that I've done this for now. But it's an interesting thinking about if you went back to where you were. I mean, I certainly would say a lot of different things to the person I was in 2017/18 when I first started off, Stephen. I'd say, okay, you need to change this. You need to put this into place because this is what's going to happen maybe a few years down the line. And especially we talk about that word of lockdown. That changed our sort of landscape of business for many, many people. It gives us a further opportunity to communicate the value of what we offer to a wider audience. And I still think we're embracing that a lot more in this day and age as well, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. What and the work that you do, what do you sometimes find is the biggest challenge for you when it comes to pricing?
I think it's the undervaluing, Stephen. It's that petition of for me, it's putting a price tag out there and it's positioning it in the right way, which I've really looked at over the past few months, especially since the beginning of the year. And especially with one of the new concepts that I've put out there, or a repositioning, is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and I've literally just put it out there this week. But I think it's down that of, am I undervaluing myself? That's what goes through my head all the time, is thinking, okay, so I'm offering a lot of experience, not just so many years in business. I'm now looking at the 30 plus years in business of how I communicate that to my audience. And also I think it's the perception that people have about me as well, Stephen. I think it's that there's a price tag on it, but then it's not just looking from, I always talk about networking, but I'm a business development strategist. So I've been in sales and business development over 30 years. So I guess for me, it's that undervaluing. It's getting that that position and that communication just right and teed up the right way that it gets out there?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question to have, Stephen, on that one. And I feel like I'm getting in a position now where there's a lot of value, and people keep saying you need to change your price point, which I have on a couple of things, but I've changed them on more of the one-on-one and day strategies that people do with me that I've just put out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else from that.
Yep.
Good question, though. Thanks for asking me the question. Like that. Thank you very much. Don't normally get people asking me questions.
There you go.
That one there. And saying about that as well, Stephen, if there's anyone watching and listening to us today, especially on LinkedIn Live, you're on my stream on my LinkedIn page, or if you're joining us on the YouTube channel with our subscribers that are on there just now, if there's any questions or any feedback you've got at all, what you've heard from me and Stephen so far, just drop it in the feed, especially on LinkedIn. If it's on YouTube, I'll see it later on, but on LinkedIn, it's instantaneous. So if you got anything you want to share, just drop it in the comment boxes below, and me and Stephen can see before we sort of wrap up today, and we might be able to ask a couple of questions if you got them, or you want some feedback, you want to share something where you've been, if you're feeling an imposter syndrome, or I'm happy to give a shout out to anybody who drops anything into the sort of chat area as well. So we talked about positioning on that one, and where do you see your business, Stephen, in the next sort of the next quarter, by the end of the year? Because we're past our second quarter now. We're going to our third and fourth fairly shortly.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see your growth happening by the end of this year?
Ooh.
I always stumble people with that, you see.
Aye, definitely. I think we're definitely still seeing growth with the monthly subscriptions, which is great. And as I say, we have launched the 90-day People Manager fix, so it's getting some traction and some interest, which is good. So there's a couple of things in the pipeline, to be fair, and I think what we're starting to see as well is with some of the new subscription clients that have came on board as well. They've been trained for a wee bit of time, but they maybe don't have everything in place that they would need to. So the last couple of retained clients, the subscription clients, that we've taken on board are growing businesses and growing at quite a fair bit of pace. So they're now in a place where we want to make sure we've got some rock solid foundations in place. So although they're coming on board as a subscription clients, we're also doing some project work for them as well at the same time to make sure that they've got the right routines, processes, they've got the right contracts in place. We're working with them to implement HR systems, digital employee handbooks. There's still a lot of work happening there. And I think, again, as these businesses grow and continue to evolve, there still will be a need for additional support over and above the day-to-day, depending on the type of culture they want to create, depending on the type of working environment they want to have, and that's quite nice as well, because you're supporting them with the day-to-day and helping them keep things ticking over, but you're also there as a strategic partner that they can tap into as and when they need you. And I think I've been quite fortunate that the retained clients that I work with, my subscription clients, I have got a pretty close to a 100% retention rate, and I think over the years that I've been in business, I've only had one client who was on a subscription that we stopped working together, and I think it was probably a good thing for both sides, because there was just there was a misalignment, and these things happen, and there's not really much you can do about it, but it's probably the best thing for both of us, because they just weren't on board with what my view of how HR should be done, and there was just like I said, there was just a bit of a clash of values and just a bit of misalignment. So that's, I think, about the only time we've seen a retained client move on, but the ones that we do work with on a regular basis, you get to know them really well. You get to know them. You get to know their teams. And you become a wee bit an extension of, you know, their team as well, which is quite nice. And as I say, it's really great being able to have a sort of partnership approach and see the success that they have in their businesses as well, and just being there as somebody who helps them to continue to keep taking that step up.
Yeah. Do you know, there's another part there you've just mentioned there, and I think it's really interesting, is that sometimes you make a decision of who you're working with and is it the right fit? And sometimes we don't address it sometimes and actually have that conversation going, listen, we're not in the right position. You know, it may be paying a subscription to you and this, you go, listen, let's just step away for a moment or two. It's just, it's not the square and the ball trying to fit into the holes, etc. It's not working that well. Let's just take a step away and readdress it and reevaluate it later on as well. I think that's a really brave thing to do as a business owner, to have that conversation sometimes, I believe now as well. Massively on that one. Thank you for sharing that.
So yeah, as I say, it's been a good start to the year, and as I say, it's nice to see that the subscription clients are continuing to grow, and we're able to continue to add value in that space. We are moving forward with the 90-day People Manager fix, and there's a couple other things that I'm looking at introducing as we go into the probably the later part of the year as well. And again, it's just trying to sort of, you know, kind of map out that service ladder, if you like. So you've got the entry level subscription services, and then moving into you know, some packages that are a bit more you know, heavily involved in the strategic side of things for clients. So yeah, a few things in the pipeline, but we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. Brilliant. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today. I think we'll just say our thank yous and everything else, but it was actually a pleasure to learn a bit more. Well, actually, just to delve into the topic of today, instead of just, we're talking about our businesses and this, that, the other within the conversation that we've had today as well. And I hope that everybody's been watching and listening today have actually taken one thing away from it, or made you think of where you position yourself right now in the current market. And also, one of the takeaways today is that looking at the grey areas and looking at the collaborative marketplace you've got in your industry, don't be shy to reach out to people that are in your industry that you want to have a chat with, that might actually open up an opportunity. Don't think I can't work with them because they're in the same industry. Think about, you know, there's actually potential for strategic alignment here between us, and it might open up another door of opportunity that you've never thought of breaching before that's in there.
Definitely. And it's definitely something that's helped massively. And any, you know, for the consultants that I have spoken to, where we've had those sort of conversations, it generally has led to us working together. And sometimes it's maybe been the other way around about. I maybe picked up some associate work or work through somebody else, and then that relationship has just continued to develop. And, you know, we're then having conversations as, you know, kind of peer-to-peer business owners. So that's definitely one thing I would say, is as much as it, you know, you sometimes might feel that hesitance to reach out to people that are doing the same thing as you. Try and do it if you can, because I'm based on my experience, you know, anybody that I've spoken to has been more than happy to help and share a bit about their journey as well.
Yeah, perfect. That's brilliant, Steve. Thank you very much for sharing that. Well, to everybody who's been watching and listening to us today, a massive thank you to everybody. If you're watching this back, please feel free, and I highly recommend, if you can, reach out to Stephen Allan at Concept HR Solutions through his LinkedIn profile and connect with him. And you know what? We're going to time and have a conversation, because at the end of the day, good business relationships, opportunities in business, sales, may I even say that, opportunities to exchange a good bit of sort of product or service between each other, is done by just having a conversation and just delving into it consistently all the time, touching base and nurturing those business relationships up in there as well. So from me and Stephen, thank you so much. Stephen, once again, thank you for joining me this week. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it as well. Thank you again.
You're welcome. And don't forget, everybody, to stay tuned for more Newpreneur casts coming up in the schedule. Click the subscribers button on the YouTube channel, and you'll be kept up to date of what's coming up over the coming weeks. So we might have a change of day, but we'll still be happening once a week. But at the moment, on a Friday at 11 o'clock still at the moment. We've got another one lined up next week as well. So looking forward to welcoming my guest there as well. And you'll find out more information on my LinkedIn page as well. So as always, have a great rest of the week. Have a cracking weekend when it arrives. And as always, everybody, keep connecting. You never know where that opportunity will arrive in the conversations that you're having. Take care, everybody. We'll see you all soon. Bye-bye for now.